11. The Sump Divers. June 27th to 28th, 2018. When Vern Unsworth warned Governor Narongsak on June 26th that he had one last chance to save the boys, he was initially ignored. Vern wasn't exactly surprised. In his urgency to help, his emotions had run away from him, and he had raised his voice to the governor when other people were around to hear. Vern had lived in Thailand long enough to understand that he had offended the mission commander. Luckily, that night, he gets another opportunity to make his case. In a meeting with Thailand's Minister of Tourism, Vern explains the need for expert cave divers. He scrawls a note for the minister. Time is running out. 1. Rob Harper. 2. Rick Stanton, MBE. 3. John Valanthan. They are the world's best cave divers. Please contact them through UK Embassy ASAP. The minister makes the call, but Vern can tell he is skeptical that their problems can be solved by a trio of British amateurs. After all, Thailand's most elite military is on the scene at Tham Luang, plus the US Air Force, plus search and rescue experts from Vietnam, China, and Australia. If anyone can locate the missing children, surely it's the team they already have. And the 3 men on Vern's list are indeed a trio of amateurs. They have no military ranking. There is no professional organization that pays them for their expertise. Some people might even call what they do a hobby. But that hobby just happens to be exactly what is needed to find the boys. The conditions at Tham Luang are too much for open water divers to handle. They are too much for even most cave divers to handle. What they need in this situation are divers who can tackle a gnarly, nasty sump. If you want to visualize what a sump is, go into your kitchen, open the cabinet under the sink, and take a look at the pipes. The drain pipe from the sink leads down, then curls upward again before disappearing into the kitchen wall. That low U-shaped section is the sump. When you turn on the faucet, the entire pipe fills with water as it flows out to the sewer. But even when you turn the faucet off, some water will remain trapped in that sump. This is also what happens inside a cave. Sumps form in cave systems when water erodes the rock unevenly, or when tunnels move around with the shifting and rising of the Earth's crust. When a cave floods, water fills its passages. But even after the flood subsides, some water is left behind in the sunken sumps. Some sumps exist year-round. Others fill only after a flood and then gradually drain away. For cavers, a sump is a major bummer. Until just a few decades ago, these pools of water would be labeled on cavers' maps as terminal sumps, meaning that was the end of the trail. But cavers know that when you find water in a cave, that water has to go somewhere. Once cavers started strapping tanks of air on their backs, they could dive through the sumps and explore the caverns beyond. Many cave divers begin as cavers first. They learn diving techniques as a way of getting past the inevitable sump that pops up on their explorations. They then get hooked on the diving, finding that it provides plenty of opportunity for discovery and record setting. For all of its high moments, diving in sumps is grueling, dangerous work. When you are in the belly of the earth, far from medical help, without any communication with the outside, one slip-up can be deadly. Many of the world's most notorious sumps can be found on the British Isles. Unlike the spacious, crystal-clear waters in the caves of Florida or Mexico, British sumps are generally cold, cramped, and murky. It's no wonder that some of the world's best sump divers are members of the British Cave Rescue Council, BCRC. The BCRC is a group of volunteers who specialize in finding and rescuing people and farm animals who are lost or trapped in caves. Every year, the BCRC conducts dozens of rescues all over the UK, and they also coordinate international requests for rescue help. They had been following the situation in Thailand online, so they weren't surprised when they were contacted by the Thai authorities. As soon as they get the notice from the BCRC, Rick Stanton and his longtime diving partner, John Valanthan, zip to Heathrow Airport in London with their colleague Rob Harper, who will support the pair above ground. While not a diver himself, Rob has 50 years of caving experience and had just been at Tham Luang a few months prior, mapping new passages with his good friend Vern Unsworth. Rick and John have been called the A-Team. Among cave divers, they are as close to being celebrities as you get. They hold a good share of the world's cave diving records, but they aren't in it for fame or recognition. It's the satisfaction of figuring out how different parts of a cave system connect, and the thrill of stepping into a place where no one else has set foot or flipped a fin that pushed them forward. Rick, John, and Rob arrive at Chiang Rai Airport on the evening of June 27th, and Dick whisks them straight to the cave. Journalists surround them, hounding them for a statement. John Valanthan simply answers, "We've got a job to do." They hope to get a good look at the cave and start talking through their dive plan, but when Vern leads them inside late that night, Tam Luang shows them right away what a hostile cave she is. In the same event that startles Major Charles Hodges and the US Air Force, the cave floods, sending everyone in a mad scramble for the exit. If the British divers had any questions about whether this would be an easy cave rescue, Tam Luang has just provided an answer. The next day, Thursday, June 28th, John and Rick kit up in their wetsuits and gear and enter the flooded Chamber 1. Yesterday, they could have walked the entire distance to Chamber 3. Today, thanks to the flash flood, they now have 3 short sumps to cross before they can even get that far. Electrical cables and wires snake through the water around them. They have gotten repeated assurances from the Thai authorities that all of the power has been shut off, but they are still nervous about being electrocuted. The water is a cloudy, milky brown. In a cave like Tam Luang, which dries out part of the year, the first floodwaters churn up all the silt and mud that has packed down during the dry season. Not only that, but the water was swirling, moving so quickly that it's eddying in small whirlpools. The water levels are continuing to rise. Normally, if Rick and John had found these conditions, they would have turned right back around. But given the urgency of finding the boys, they decide to see if they can push past Chamber 3 and figure out what lies beyond. They slosh through half-flooded Chamber 2, then dive through 2 short sumps. When they pass the 3rd sump and surface in Chamber 3, they hear voices. Have they found the boys? No way. Surely that was too easy. As they shine their lights into the dark cave, they realize they haven't found children. They have found 4 adult men. The men are employees of the Thai Well Water Association who have spent the last several days working on the water pumping operation in Chamber 3. At first, Chamber 3 was dry, and it was well stocked with food and drinking water, so workers didn't have to make the strenuous hike back to the entrance so often. Like everyone in Chamber 3, the Well Water Association employees worked long, grueling hours, and they had collapsed in a dark corner of the chamber to catch a few hours of sleep. While they were resting, the floodwaters began rising quickly. The Thai Navy SEALs evacuated the chamber, but in the rush to get everyone out, they overlooked the sleeping workers. The checkpoint at the cave entrance wasn't well organized at that time, and any record of the 4 men being inside the cave was lost. Because of all the people working inside the cave, oxygen levels were slightly lower than outside. This can make people feel groggy and have trouble thinking clearly, which may explain why the men didn't wake up during the clamor to evacuate. When they finally did rouse from sleep, they found themselves alone in the half-flooded cave. By the time Rick and John find them, the men are cold and terrified. The workers had tried to swim out, but couldn't make it through the first sump. They have spent the last 24 hours standing in waist-deep water, praying that someone would find them. Rick and John aren't prepared for a rescue. They haven't brought extra tanks or face masks. None of the workers have ever scuba dived before. The water in Chamber 3 is littered with abandoned equipment, and the surface swirls with the sheen of gasoline. The conditions are awful, but the water is rising by the minute, which means they need to act fast. The divers decide to do a snatch, or unplanned rescue, which will require them to take turns crossing the sumps with the stranded men. Rick takes off his gear and gives it to one of the workers, who is guided through the first sump by John. John then swims the gear back through to the waiting workers. They continue this process, taking turns until the entire group is through. The relieved and grateful workers emerge into the open, feeling lucky to be alive. Rick and John are lucky too. If the water had come up quickly, the diver who had taken off his gear would have been trapped on the far side of the sump with no air supply. The experience has been sobering for both Rick and John. They now know how appalling the water conditions in Tam Luang really are. The men they rescued were jittery, and they barely got out without panicking. If the boys ultimately have to be extracted from the cave using the same method, they'll have to dive even deeper and swim even farther. But in order to do that, the rescue team will have to find them first.